Hello and welcome to our discussion today. We want to look at managing strategic change in our discussion today. And by the end of this class, you should be able to explain the nature and drivers of strategic change. And then we should also be able to examine some models of change management. Okay, so strategic change is a significant transformation in an organization structure. It could be in its operations, it could be in the culture or goals to adapt to external and internal influences. If you have been following our discussions, you would have heard that at one point we said the environment of an organization is not static, it is dynamic. Because of this dynamic nature, the organization cannot take a position of um, staticity. It cannot be static, right? So if the organization cannot be static, then it means that from time to time, there are likely to be changes in both the external and internal environments that will warrant for change in the organization itself. So those transformations which happen in the organization structure, in its operations, or in the culture or goals of the organization is what you refer to as organizational change. And strategic is what we call strategic change. Sorry. So that is what we call strategic change. Strategic change helps businesses respond to market dynamics, to technological changes, all right, and the competitive pressures around, okay? And it helps to improve on long-term sustainability and growth of the firm. Strategic change, all right, has some features, and we want to discuss some of the features or the nature of strategic change. The first one is that in most cases, strategic change is an incremental change. Okay, so it can be an incremental change. And if we say incremental change, we mean gradual improvements or adjustments. And this is not like a very big thing. What it's a gradual thing. So incremental means gradual increases or gradual improvements in what is already being done. So for example, if you pick the process of a process in the organization, a gradual improvement in the process is what you call the incremental change. Okay, so in that case, the incremental change will not be maybe a change of the equipment entirely, but maybe little modifications of the parts of the equipment used for carrying out that process. Okay, so strategic change can be incremental. It can also be transformational. If we say transformational, it means a radical shift in the strategy or structure. This that it does not follow any gradual improvement or adjustment. It's a radical shift. Okay. So that's what you call the transformational change. And sometimes when organizations are changing from the traditional system into maybe a data-led system or to one that is enabled by technology, in most of the cases, they are transformational. Okay. And then the third nature is that strategic change requires alignment with the organizational vision and mission. So no matter the change, it has to align with the organization's vision and mission. Strategic change involves uncertainty and risk. In most cases, this is why sometimes employees would resist the change because it comes with uncertainty and risk. And people don't really like risks or they don't like uncertainty. And so, if strategic change would involve uncertainty and risks, then in most of the cases, sometimes employees resist it. Okay. It also demands leadership and employee commitment. Strategic change will not be successful if leadership is not committed to the change, if employees are not committed to the change. So strategic change requires alignment with organizational vision. It involves uncertainty and risk. It demands leadership and employee commitment. It can be transformational or an incremental change. There are several drivers of strategic change, and these drivers can be grouped into external drivers and internal drivers. The external drivers are market dynamics, changing consumer preferences or the competitive pressures. They can also be as a result of technological advancements, okay, where maybe a process has been automated or a new equipment has been um, manufactured into the industry, right? And so every other person is making use of it. Your organization also decides to make a purchase, right? It can also take the form of digital platforms or artificial intelligence, which is now all around us. Okay. So the drivers of change, we have the market dynamics, technological advances. It can also be as a result of regulatory changes. Regulatory changes have to do with compliance with new laws and policies. Okay. It can also be as a result of economic factors. If you have recessions or inflation and the issues of globalization, all can cause strategic change. And these are the external drivers. You have market dynamics, technological advances, regulatory changes, and economic factors. Then we have the internal drivers of strategic change. The internal drivers of strategic change can be the performance gaps, okay? For example, if the organization has identified some inefficiencies in its operations, or if it has realized that it's no more making profits like it used to, then it will call for strategic change. Okay, so the first driver is performance gaps. You can also have leadership vision, okay, that will call for strategic change. Sometimes when there's a change in leadership or when people are promoted, new leaders most of the times introduce innovative strategies. So as a new leader comes on board, they are likely to introduce an innovative strategy that will call for a change. Okay. So you have the performance gaps, leadership vision. The third driver, internal driver of strategic change, is the culture, the organizational culture. Okay. And sometimes the strategies would have to adapt to employee expectations or what is happening with the employees and in their lives. So as the issues evolve and as the employees mature, as they grow, as they get exposed to what is happening in other places, the culture also tends to change or it tends to tilt towards a particular direction. And when this happens, it calls for strategic change. Okay. And the fourth one is resource constraints. So if there are financial limitations, maybe there has to be some restructuring in the organization, then it calls for change. So these are the internal drivers of strategic change. You have the performance gaps, leadership vision, the organizational culture, and then resource constraints. In managing strategic change, there are some challenges, okay? And like I have already said, the first one is the resistance to change. Studies have shown that employees are most of the times reluctant to change, or they are not readily willing to adapt to new strategies or new ways of doing things. Okay, so the first challenge in managing strategic change is the resistance to change from employees and stakeholders. All right. The second one is a lack of clear vision. All right. Sometimes the purpose of the change, why the organization needs to change, or the benefits of that change, it's such that it's not clearly communicated to employees and stakeholders. And so it becomes difficult to follow through the change. The third challenge is insufficient resources. Depending on what the organization has and what it doesn't have, will make the strategic change process a difficult one or an easy one. Okay, so sometimes if they don't have enough resources, if the organization has insufficient resources, then it becomes difficult to um change or to manage the strategic change. And then the last one is cultural misalignment, where you have existing values and behaviors which conflict with what you are introducing. Okay, so if the employees are used to a particular culture and what you are introducing is so different from what they are used to, then it becomes difficult to manage the change. All right. So there are several models of change management, and we'll look at these four. All right. We'll look at the Lewis change management model. We'll look at Kotter's 8-step change model. We'll look at the ADKAR model, and then the McKinsey 7S framework. Okay. So these are the four models of change management that we would focus on. The first one is Lewis change management model. And this model has three phases, all right? It has the unfreeze phase, the change phase, and then the refreeze phase. The unfreeze phase is the phase where you create an awareness of the need for change. So at the unfreeze stage, or at the unfreeze phase, you make the people, employees, or every other stakeholder, you make them aware of the need for change. Okay. The reason for which you are calling for a change would have to be made known to the people, and they have to be aware. Okay. Then the second phase is the change phase, where you implement the new strategy or you come up with a new process. All right. So this is where the change really happens. Then the third phase is the refreeze phase. The refreeze phase is a phase where you now reinforce and sustain the change. If the refreeze phase does not happen, what in most cases will happen is, after implementing the new process or strategies, if you don't move on to the third phase, people go back to the first phase, or people go back to the period before the change was implemented. Okay, so according to Lewis change management model, you have three phases: the unfreeze phase, the change phase, and then the refreeze phase. This model is very simple and it has clear steps. It has three clear steps. And so it makes it very easy to understand and very easy to use as a model for change management. However, because of its simplicity, it's not really adaptable to changes which are complex. So for very complex changes, the Lewis change management model does not really apply. Then we have the Cortez 8-step change model. And this one starts with the fact, the first one says you create the agency. All right. So at the first step of the Cortez model, right, it says you create agency where you highlight the importance of an immediate action. So you make people know that there's need for a change. Then step 2, you build a coalition, right? So here you form a team that will lead the change, or you put together the change management team. So they will lead the change. Once you put together the team, then you develop a vision where you provide clear directions for what is supposed to be done. Okay, so you develop a vision. And then once the vision is developed, it is communicated to ensure that every stakeholder understands what is going to happen. Okay. Once you communicate the vision, then you empower action, or you take off every obstacle that can get in the way of the change. So anything that is likely to prevent the change from happening has to be taken off. So you empower action. Then the 6th step is to generate quick wins. All right. Here you need to show the benefits of the change. So as the change is happening, all right, any benefits that are seen, no matter how small, should be shown to the team or the stakeholders to help them understand and appreciate what is happening. Okay. Then you consolidate gains or build on short-term wins for long-term successes. And then the 8th step is to anchor the changes. All right. Where you embed the new practices into the culture. So the 8th step aligns with Lewis's third phase, all right, where you anchor the changes in the culture of the organization. Cortez 8-step or Cortez 8-step change model has its strength on the fact that it engages, okay? It keeps the team together. It works with everybody, keeps stakeholders informed, all right, tries to communicate what is happening, benefits that are coming from the change and everything. So that is where it gets its strength from. So Cortez 8-step change model dwells on the fact that there's a lot of communication going on, people are engaged, and everybody knows what is happening. Okay. The challenge, however, is in the time. All right. It takes a lot of time. It is time intensive. Okay. So that is the limitation for Cortez 8-step change model. Then you have the ADKAR model. The ADKAR model has 5 phases. It has the awareness phase, the desire phase, the knowledge phase, the ability phase, and then the reinforcement phase, right? At the awareness phase is where you identify the need for the change, okay? Then once you identify the need for the change, you move to the desire, which fosters a motivation for the change. Then the third phase is the knowledge phase, where stakeholders are equipped with what it takes for the change to happen. Okay, so you equip stakeholders with the necessary skills for the change. And then there's the ability phase at phase 4. Okay, the ability phase where you facilitate the application of new skills. So once they have been equipped with the skills, they should use it. All right. So if it was a training that was given, it has to be used. Okay. And then the reinforcement, or the fifth phase, is where you ensure sustainability. All right. And the outcome model stresses on the fact that individuals and organizations have to be ready for the change. Okay. It emphasizes individual and organizational readiness. That is for the outcome model. And it really, it gets the people prepared for the change. Okay. Then we have the McKinsey 7S model, okay, which it was developed by Tom Peters, all right? And they identified 7 internal elements of an organization which have to all align for that organization to be successful, all right? And the goal of this model was to show how the 7 S's, they are called the 7 S's. So Mackenzie's 7S model, you have the structure, the strategy, the skills, the staff, the style, the systems, and then shared values. It shows how all of these elements align together to ensure that the organization is effective when change is happening. Okay, so the key point of this model is the fact that all the 7 elements are interconnected, so that a change in one element will affect the rest of the areas of the firm. So if there's a change in the staff, according to this model, it will affect all the other 6 elements that are left. Okay, that's what the 7S, Mackenzie's 7S model says. So this is how it looks like, right? And you see that all the elements are connected to every other element, directly or indirectly. So you can have the strategy connected to all the others indirectly, okay? And then directly it is connected to structure, it's connected to shared values, it's connected to strategy, it's connected to staff, it's connected to systems, right? And then indirectly connected to style through the shared values. So you notice that the 7 S's, which are the structure, system, style, staff, shared values, the skills, and the strategy, are all connected together. So a change in one element affects every other element. That is what this model says. So if you say the strategy, you are referring to the organization's plan for building and maintaining a competitive advantage over its competitors. Okay, so what here, if there's a change in strategy, means that there's a change in the organization's plan. What this model says is that if there's a change in the organization's plan, it will affect the structure, it will affect the systems, it will affect share values, it will affect the style, it will affect your staff, it will also affect the skills of the employees. Okay, so that's it about the 7S model. So you have the structure. The structure looks at how the organization has been put together. We looked at the structure, the organizational structure earlier. Every organization has its own structure, right? Then there are systems. The systems here refer to the daily activities and procedures that the staff use to get the job done. All right. So all the processes, the procedures, what is done to ensure that you meet your objectives. Those are the systems you have put in place. All right. Then you have the shared values. And these are the core values of the organization. All right. These values can be seen in the organizational culture, or the corporate culture as it is called. All right. And a change in these values affects every other element of the model. All right. Then the style here refers to the style of leadership that is adopted. So depending on the style of leadership that management is adopting, it can affect every other element of the model. Then you have the staff and skills. Okay. So according to McKinsey, you have the strategy, the structure, the systems, the shared values of the organization, their skills, the staff, and the style of leadership adopted. And all of these are related in a way that if there is a change in any of the elements, it affects the other elements also. Okay, so if if you want to manage the change, what it means is that a change in strategy would affect structure. And so you'd have to watch the structure, watch the systems, watch the shared values, the style of leadership, the staff, all right, their abilities, and then their skills. Okay. The Mackenzie 7S model is mostly applied to situations where the organizational design is a problem. Okay, so where you have a problem with the structural design of the organization, then it is required that you use the Mackenzie 7S model. So this one helps to facilitate organizational change, right? It helps to implement a new strategy, and it's also used in cases where you want to identify how each component or how each element is likely to change in the future. Okay. And then it also helps in situations of measures of organizations. Remember that in the strategy formulation, there are times that an organization will want to um, get out of business, and so it would merge with another organization, or another company would acquire it. Okay, so in such situations, then the Mackenzie 7S model becomes very relevant. So it's used when you want to facilitate organizational change, when you want to help implement a new strategy, and when you want to identify how each area may change in the future, as well as to facilitate the measure of organizations. So in implementing strategic change, there are some steps you look at. All right. The first one is to diagnose the need for change. And the only way you get to know that there's the need for a change is where you have performed an analysis or a scan of a sort. Okay, so you diagnose the need for a change, and then you use the tools, okay, the tools that we have discussed so far to perform the scan. And after performing the analysis or the scan, if you notice that there's the need for a change, then you develop a change plan. And the change plan will require that you define the goal, the key actions, as well as the timelines for the change. Once this is done, you engage the stakeholders. They need to know exactly what you want to do. All right. You need to explain the change clearly. So you communicate clearly, and then you involve the employees at all levels. All right. You don't leave them until it gets to when they are hit with the change. They have to know that something like that is going to happen right from the word go. Okay. Then, after engaging with the stakeholders, you execute the plan. So, you implement the actions systematically whilst you monitor the progress. And then you evaluate and adapt. So, it's not really always a smooth journey, but as the implementation goes on, and you monitor the progress, you evaluate the outcomes, or you assess the outcomes, and then you refine if necessary, or you maybe stop completely if it has to be stopped. But as you evaluate, you are able to know whether you are on course or whether your objectives are being met. Okay, so basically these are the steps to implement a strategic change. What you are to do is to discuss the challenges you have observed in managing strategic change. So around you, what have you observed as some of the challenges people go through when they are managing strategic change? So here I would want practical scenarios, right? I would want practical scenarios. You may have to give me the name of the organization and the nature of the challenge that they faced. And then which change management model resonates most with your experience and why? Okay, so I want you to go through all the four that we have discussed, and then you tell us which of them resonates most with your experience and why. We will all discuss this in class when we meet. Thank you all very much for your time. I'll see you again shortly. Bye bye.